Hey, Chris. How are you today? It's fantastic to have you on the show.
Hey, Elliot, I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for chatting.
Of course. It's a pleasure to have you. We had connected earlier in the week, and seeing your work over at NeuroHope Wellness is something that we've kind of been following along a bit now. And your story is amazing. What's kind of share a little bit of insight with your story? Love to hear it.
Sure, thanks. So NeuroHope, we are a rehabilitation center for spinal cord injury, brain injury, stroke, specializing in long-term care. So that's kind of where the health and wellness aspect comes in, where, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit in this conversation, but traumatic injuries, life-changing injuries take a long time to recover from, but the hospital system really has limitations in care. So what NeuroHope does is we're a hybrid rehabilitation center mixed with a fitness center for people with disabilities. That's what makes us so unique. And started from my own personal injury. I had a spinal cord injury 15 years ago, paralyzed from the neck down. I was on a kayaking trip with two of my best friends, and one of those beautiful summer Sundays, and 28-year-old athletic guy, not a care in the world, but then your life will change. You never know. And we were kayaking, came off to a bridge, wanted to have a little bit of fun, take a plunge into the water, jumped feet first from about 50 feet up, and another individual there who I didn't know jumped after me and landed on my head when we hit the water. So witnesses said it looked as though my body opened the hole in the water, and the second guy that jumped landed right on top of me, and just like a light switch, I was paralyzed from the neck down. I broke my neck at the C4 cervical level. So it was the start of a very long odyssey of rehabilitation. I was told initially I'd never move another muscle again. When you're 28, that's life-changing. But I started getting a little bit of glimpses of movement within the first couple weeks. I went on this long journey of rehabilitation from spinal cord injury. And every injury is different. Every recovery is different. But it's a journey that took me across the country over the course of many years to slowly relearn how to walk again. I am fortunate. I still live with my injury, but I am ambulatory again, and really inspired me to create a center that would give people access to the best resources in neuro recovery so they could recover. But then also, as we've grown over the years, we've been open 10 years now. Yesterday was actually our 10-year anniversary. We're also helping people that are chronically hurt. It goes beyond just rehab. It goes into health and wellness also, because people who are disabled, people who may be spending a lot of their times in wheelchairs, they need to stay active and healthy. So that's where the model that we've created sort of fits. So to answer your question, long-winded answer, but my journey started through my personal injury, really trying to change healthcare, and now also trying to change people's lives long-term.
That's awesome. It's truly inspiring, and I mean, doing it for 10 years already now, and congratulations on the 10-year mark. That's a huge step. Unfortunate circumstances and how you kind of got into that, you know, that business and that side of things. But you're definitely creating a path for a lot of people who have had either similar unfortunate circumstances happen to them, or even kind of on the preventative side as well. There's something out there where just because something happens to you and life happens to a lot of people doesn't mean it's hopeless. There's always a way. There's something. You could be that one in a million, but we're trying to make it a one in one, right? We're trying to always have that betterment for everyone else as well. Outside of the accident that started this journey for you, what other challenges or obstacles have you faced as a brand leader within this industry, and kind of how are you preparing for the future?
Well, it's a good question. I think being an entrepreneur, being a social entrepreneur, we're a nonprofit on top of being a rehabilitation center. You never know. You never know if you're going to go out of business in a week, a month. You see some of those memes online about the journey of a founder, and it shows them having amazing days and then days they want to bury themselves in the sand, and very, it's very realistic. I was fortunate to partner with some physical therapists and a university, and have had a lot of fundraising initially to help me launch my brand and launch our clinic. But the challenge of any entrepreneur, particularly in health and wellness in the healthcare industry, is, getting to that level where you can reach sustainability, because you want to change the world, you want to change people's lives, but what are the path? What's the path you take? What's the plan you have? What's the vision you have? And how do you execute? So I've been blessed over the last decade to have an amazing team behind me that have helped me, that help guide our benchmarks, help guide our plan, help guide our community that have really got us to where we've been. So I think like any entrepreneur, the challenge is um, finding the team that will help you execute your vision. If you find the right team and you have the passion yourself to make the sacrifices, jump all in. You have to jump all in. You can't halfway. And that's how you're going to succeed. So I think challenges are it's going to happen every day. There's always challenges, but you just overcome them with the right attitude and the right people behind you.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, it's definitely there's a lot more challenges that we kind of unspoken about within the industry and kind of what we see in the future as well. What's kind of an exciting trend that you see the future happening in the health and wellness space?
In health and well, I guess there's two part. I could go a couple ways in that question. I think our niche is pretty healthcare related. Healthcare is a hot button topic. Healthcare costs are rising. Healthcare providers fee schedules from hospitals and are rising, but insurance companies can be somewhat restrictive. So our niche is pretty much there. So in the rehabilitative space, what excites me are some of the new technology that's coming out there in neurorehabilitation in particular. I think we live in an exciting time where there's research being done not only for rehabilitation techniques for physical therapy, robotics, surgical implants, but even in the lab too. There's work being done to try to help with axonal regrowth and stem cell research and all that. So that's what excites me in my field, because I think at some point in my lifetime, I hope there may be a cure for spinal cord injury. But even if that magic bullet happens, then there's going to have to be programs in place where people have access to health and wellness, long-term access to physicians, to the standard of care. And right now that doesn't exist. So that's what our organization does so differently, is that we say, okay, traditional healthcare is restrictive of care. Well, we're going to try to change the paradigm and make access possible. So that's what excites me in that field. In the more of the fitness field, that's not necessarily my expertise, but there's a lot of electrical stimulation companies that are coming out there that are using electrodes, kind of like a TENS unit. If you've ever seen one of those, you put electrodes that kind of hit the muscles and can help activate the nervous system. That's being used in the rehabilitative side, but also crossing over in fitness. So there's a company called the Newbie. There's a company from Restorative Therapies that are starting to cross over into fitness. So I think there's definitely interventions that cross both worlds that I think are exciting here in the next decade.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a lot of exciting things kind of in all sectors and even neurologically as well. I think the education piece on that is, like you said, how you kind of started your journey, where you need to kind of show what you have and what is out there in order to help the rehabilitation side as well as the preventative side, and all these new technologies and all these new studies, science-backed strategies, where there's new tools coming out every single day, and hopefully there is one day that we can see the sun shining and spinal cord injuries no longer being a thing, or at least much less than what it currently is. It's kind of an exciting time in the whole space in general, but I'm glad to hear your take on it as well, especially within your niche. And to that point, as the industry continues to grow, where do you see the future of the brands? Like where do you see like wellness brands, healthcare brands? I mean, I know you're more in the healthcare side, you can kind of hit more on that. Where do you see the healthcare brands growing to? And how are you preparing for that future? I know you're a nonprofit.
I think right now, you look even at the national level, one of the big conversations the United States per capita, we're a pretty unhealthy nation. I think going into physical activity, going into nutrition, the food we eat, people are getting more and more inactive. I think from the wellness standpoint, I think it'll be a time where those brands will really have to find new ways to reach clients to really try to increase overall long-term health and wellness for people. And I think, local governments are trying to figure out ways to cut healthcare costs, but it's all tied to the cost of healthcare. That's also tied to nutrition, to hospital readmission rates. Like, we, as a whole, we're not healthy, and there have to be solutions to keep our population healthy. And when it comes to the population that NeuroHope serves, and particularly folks who are sedentary in wheelchairs, have even more of a struggle. So 1 in 4 people with a spinal cord injury, for example, are re-hospitalized at least once a year because of inactivity. They don't have the education to know how to treat their bodies if they're sedentary. They don't have access to staying active and staying healthy, and everybody needs to stay active and healthy, particularly if you're in a wheelchair. So I take it back to our niche, and as a community, that's the main thing, is figuring out ways to keep everyone out of the hospital, keep everyone healthy. And I think it starts with activity and it starts with nutrition. And I don't have the answers to that other than trying to, the whole thing where you can lead a horse to water. You try to talk about what you're doing and helping the clients that you see. But that's probably, from my perspective, that's going to be the key for the future, to just keeping people healthy.
No, I agree with that for sure. It's obviously a forever changing landscape. And as you mentioned, America as a whole is not the healthiest nation. Kind of to sum up the whole question, what do you see as the future of healthcare brands, and how are you preparing for that future?
Well, I think from my perspective, in my niche, it's more geared toward rehabilitation and healthcare costs. So I think the primary thing that we are focused on are trying to figure out ways to drive down healthcare costs from our patient population. And I think what's important for us to do that is keeping people healthy long term. So one of the things that we've kind of pivoted for our plan is, we still see physical therapy, occupational therapy for people that are in that rehab stage, but we're also really placing an emphasis on exercise programs, group classes, gym programs for people with disabilities to keep them healthy long term, because everybody needs to stay active and healthy. Even more so for people who are physically disabled, are sedentary, may spend a lot of time in wheelchairs. For us, our biggest excitement for the future is we recently partnered with another nonprofit called Conquer Paralysis Now, that was started by a paralyzed former Indianapolis 500 race car driver, Sam Schmidt, who was paralyzed in a crash on the speedway track in a practice 25 years ago. And he's become a major voice for the spinal cord injury community over the years. And his nonprofit purchased a building on the north side of Indianapolis, Indiana. There used to be a former health club, 100,000 square foot health club that our organization, NeuroHope, has partnered with, and we run the operations there. But ultimately, we want to work together to really make a campus that focuses on health and wellness in addition to rehabilitation. So revamping some giant sports courts to maybe host wheelchair basketball events, tournaments, expand wellness programs, have wheelchair accessible fitness center, really going above and beyond for folks that are living with injuries to keep them healthy. So it's really the marriage of healthcare and health and wellness. It's all tied. It costs the healthcare system a lot of money, and we're trying to do what we can to help some of the high cost patients that are in the system. So that's really where we're looking at right now. And it's exciting for our community here in Indianapolis and for people living with disabilities.
It's awesome. That's awesome. That's definitely a great, initiative and project that's, exciting I know it's exciting for you guys. It's going to be exciting for the state of Indianapolis, and I think it's going to be exciting for our nation as a whole. Because, if we're able to do this in Indianapolis, the limits don't end there. We could do it in almost every single state, right? And kind of spread that awareness and be able to actually get everyone involved with it as well. One final question for you. What's your takeaway or your hope that the audience, I'll say that differently. What's one takeaway that you hope that the audience will gain from this conversation?
I think it's, if the audience is entrepreneurs in the healthcare space, it's, don't give up. Try to recognize what your reason for being is, why you are passionate about the field that you are embarking on, and find the right people to help you carry on your dream and carry on your vision. I think that's pretty important. If the audiences are fitness enthusiasts, it's, I'm speaking to the choir. Then they know how the importance of health and wellness, but hopefully they can kind of learn a little bit about what I've said about folks with disabilities, because a lot of people don't think about people with disabilities. You think about health and fitness and you think of the CrossFit athlete. You don't think of the person in a wheelchair that needs to stay active just as importantly. So it's recognizing outside your comfort zone. Health and wellness affects everybody. Everybody needs to stay healthy, and everybody can have a good quality of life.
Awesome. I love to hear it. Where can people go learn a little bit more about the rehabilitation side of spinal cord injuries and everything that you guys are doing as well?
You can follow us on social media, NeuroHope, at NeuroHope on Instagram and Facebook, NeuroN.
Awesome. And I'll have that all linked below as well. Chris, I appreciate your time hopping on the podcast. I'll speak to you soon, and hopefully everyone gets to go see your stuff and see the exciting things that you guys are going to be a part of soon.
All right. Thanks, Elliot.